This is Chris and Rick Talk Guitars. Over there is Chris.
Hello.
And over here is Rick. And something recently happened. A viral video went around from Gibson. And it's kind of been a little... it's been stirring the pot in guitar circles. And Chris and I have talked about it briefly, but we thought it'd be a really good time to discuss it because there's a lot to unpack about the video, but just a lot about Gibson in general and how this video kind of relates to the company and all that stuff. And what do you think, Chris? Do you want to give us your take on it? And...
No, I mean, I think with what you and I talk about, we have a tendency to just not really want to talk about things because who needs some more opinions in that viral shit pool of everybody has an opinion.
Hey, we're
but
all
it just struck me as, I mean, the video is just one tiny, element of like Gibson doing stupid things throughout their history. So I think if we just maybe use that as the, kind of the framework and just talk about Gibson doing stupid, which they do from time to time.
Exactly.
So what are your impressions of the video?
I've got mixed emotions about it. First of all, I think the spokesperson they got is interesting, to say the least, and his approach to... He seems passionate, but at the same time, a little off-putting.
A little aggro.
A little
like
aggro.
Thinly veiled aggro.
And a little smarmy, to be honest.
Have you seen that dude's videos?
I actually haven't, which is weird because I you know what? I think I have seen a couple.
You probably would if you were
I didn't make the
around.
Connection until we started talking about it.
He worked for Norm's Rare Guitars, and it's kind of like the used car salesman guy that does guitars of the month.
And he comes across that way. And anyway, it is a little like heavy-handed and threatening.
Thinly veiled.
Thinly veiled. Yeah. I mean, it's not so thinly veiled, I don't think.
No, I guess you're right.
Because he talks about copyright infringement, and you guys are on our list. Essentially, we got our eyes on you.
Talking about.
Yeah, and so I think, on the one hand, I think it seems very provocative, and a lot of people have reacted like, oh, come on, why are you're being bullies, essentially. That's been a lot of the feedback from people online and stuff like that. So there's that side of it. And I think this video kind of is that. It is kind of bullying a little bit.
And maybe we should say, for someone that isn't familiar, just the general gist of the video. Yeah. The video is called Play Authentic. Oh, yeah. And he comes out here and he's kind of like says, attention, all you people who are copying our stuff. We're coming after you, or something like that, to that effect. So
That's
it's about copyright infringement, or, them claiming that, they're authentic and nothing else is. So, watch out because we're going to sue your ass.
Exactly.
Kind of, that was kind of the gist that, the video tries to put across.
Yeah.
I actually love stuff like that. I love shit like that. It's like, watching train wrecks or something like that. And one of the reasons I like that so much is because the internet is a wonderful place for people watchers. And I'm like a people watch.
Yeah.
And just agree. Go to any of the big sites where they're talking about this. And, you see the typical person in charge of their sector shows up. Like you have one of my favorites is the never gonna buy agains.
Right.
They're like the first thing they say, I'm never gonna buy a Gibson again. And if I think if you pressed, you would find out that they haven't ever bought a Gibson.
Right.
And then they're probably not going to buy one anyway. And then there's the headstock faller offers that will just take the opportunity to point out like how Gibson headstocks fall off. Those are my two favorites.
I love it.
My whole general take, and we can talk about the video more, a little bit more deeply, but for me, just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, I've never had a problem with separating Gibson guitars from the Gibson Guitar Company.
Yeah.
There's
That's
nothing.
Thing.
It's interesting to watch, and like I said, I'm attracted to this kind of like drama.
Yeah.
But I don't give a shit. I mean, I like Gibson guitars. You know what I mean? I'm going to always like Gibson guitars no matter what they do.
Yeah.
I don't ever need to buy a new guitar. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I don't trust a guitar player who says, I hate Gibson guitars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, you can hate the company. You can hate, I know people who hate Les Pauls or don't like them. They're they're carved top, they hurt my arm, or they're just not for them. But, just to write off, the 335, the Explorer, the SG, and all these other things is just as a guitar player, it's just, I don't see how that... do you know anybody who actually doesn't like Gibson guitars.
I don't, but I know. Players. No, I don't, but I know exactly what you mean. I think online we probably come across those people where it's like, yeah, Gibson sucks. You know, I'm a fan. I have seen that. There are Fender camps and Gibson camps, and there are people who are like totally write off a whole brand, Gibson. And like you said, under the umbrella of Gibson, there's every guitar that might suit your needs. You know what I mean? There's single coils, there's P90s, there's humbuckers, there's different body styles. And so, but again, to your point, it's like Gibson is an iconic maker of guitars going back to the 1800s.
Right.
And if you look at tons of hugely successful guitar players, Gibson plays prominently in their toolkit, if you will, or whatever. Right. And yeah, to write off any brand like that, Fender or Gibson, or I'd never buy it, is ridiculous.
And to write it off because of something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like something a big corporate, something stupid. Right. I mean, we could talk about Apple. I mean, I make a lot of money from Apple products. It's what I do my job on. It's like if I really want to focus on the stupid things they've done, the wasteful,
or
whatever.
Steve Jobs was a dick.
Yeah, exactly. I don't. So you have to. I think you just do better as somebody who works on the computer or somebody who plays guitar if you just separate those things.
You have to.
And then you can just enjoy them when shit like this happens. I mean, think about it. Gibson 2019 started out the gate. Everybody was like, wow, they're turning things around. They had a whole lot, a bunch of new models in the line that appealed to a bunch of people. Yeah. And then they dropped this turd, and everybody's just freaking out. And I think it's fucking hilarious.
I do too. And like you say, we're so reactionary these days, and we're so in the moment. It's like you're saying, I remember that too. It's like when they got the new CEO and everything, it's like it was all this positive chatter online, like, oh man, they got rid of that old guy who was a complete idiot, which he was, still is. But yeah, there was this optimism bubbling up, like, oh yeah, they're going to turn it around, and maybe they'll get back to the glory days of the company, and just all it takes is one incident, and now the chatter is like, oh, I'll never buy a fucking Gibson again.
Totally,
and other crap.
And Gibson knows it too because they pulled that video right away. But I just want to know what they were thinking in the first place when they did it. I mean,
and that's another big question. Is like, what were you guys thinking? Because there's tons of ways to kind of broach that subject that aren't as in your face or bullying. And again, like a lot of people brought up the fact that it's like, okay, it's been how long now, and what have you really done to fight all these people making that body style or this body style? And I don't really know the behind the scenes. Maybe they have been fighting. I mean, you and I both know from the 70s there were lawsuit guitars, and these Fender was trying to sue and Gibson, other these Japanese manufacturers and stuff like that.
In recent times, I think there were a couple of failed attempts. I think they tried to sue PRS and lost. I don't either. I don't know all of the details on that. But it's like, take that video, keep the title, play authentic, and talk about, you have all this positive stuff going. Talk about the things that you talked about, but not in a threatening way, and tell them how you're doing that today, if you are doing that. I mean, instead of going after the person who's robbing your design, go after the person on the line who's leaving sharp fret edges.
Exactly.
Which I don't know if that's still a problem, but it's been, unbound necks and just like not the level of fret end finishing you're going to have. So, I mean, they could have took that and did in a positive way and used all that momentum that they gathered from, coming out the gate, like with a new dude and, and like a lot of cool models and stuff. But no, they just wanted to do that. Like, I don't know.
I was going to say the same thing. It's like you could have used all that goodwill that you generated by changing the CEO and everything else, and then just come out with a video saying, here's the deal. You love the qualities of our 50s and 60s instruments. We're bringing it back. Here's how we're doing it. We're going back to these methods, or we're using these other methods to make the same quality guitars that you love from the 50s and 60s. That's what they could have said.
Highlight a couple of you've had time. You probably know what's going on. You have access to the internet. Highlight a few of the models that people are really into and go into a little in depth about them.
Why don't they hire us?
Are you listening? I'm on board.
Maybe they will after this.
Yeah, maybe I'll get a guitar out of it. Yeah. No, it's hilarious, and I'm way into it. So I'll check this stuff out any chance I can. What was the last stupid thing they did?
Well, hiring that dingbat that's been in charge for I don't even know how long.
Well, that's since the 90s. I think.
He did so much damage to that company. That's where they really went astray, I think, is by hiring that guy. He was arrogant. He was totally detached. I mean, he came out with body styles and quote innovations that were just like, I just didn't see where that was going to be successful. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I was thinking about that, about some of their quote innovations, and I mean, I think we have to separate ourselves from. I'm sure there's a huge amount of guitar players that just want the classic shit. I mean, and that's who I think they should be playing to. But, they don't. But you just think about a giant corporation that does market research and they try to find these little pockets of people. We need to make something for those people. And that's where, like, the robot guitars and all that shit come from. That's what I think happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I can't even fathom why anybody would want any of that shit. Just focus on this. But I guess there's so many people in the world. There's more guitar players than ever. They're trying to pick out these little pockets of people and appeal to them. That's what my thought is.
Sure.
Because I'm the same way. It's like, who the fuck would want that? I mean, I don't know.
And I totally dig that. I understand that. I understand a business's need to survive and to change and adapt and stuff like that. But again, like I said, to me, the decisions that they made seemed uninformed by market research because the RoboTuners came and went, and like, and like the Firebird X and all this weird shit that they did, like, came and went. So if some of these ideas were truly informed by a demand out there or something else,
right? Market research,
it would have survived. It would, you'd think anyway, right?
Right.
But you're right. I mean, you are right. They have to try to keep doing new things and innovating and changing. But it just seems like they could have done it more thoughtfully and with the legacy of their brand in mind. You know what I mean? Because they're such an iconic brand. It's like, look, let's not go off the rails and try to, innovate or do these things. Let's do it so that we're respecting the legacy of our brand.
Right. I've seen things like that too, where they've released a model, and I wish I had the exact example. I think it was some sort of a SG Junior style instrument, and there was one small detail that they left out that would have been really easy to do, and it would have completely appealed to this whole, these vintage enthusiasts to get, a decently priced like guitar, but. And it was, and the thing that they chose, the detail that was different, was so far off base from someone who would, because it was like a single P90 instrument, and the people that are into those would be way into the details of these, and they left something off. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, what the fuck are they thinking?
Right.
I mean, the guy who wants 3 pickups and all this bling isn't going to want that, and that's kind of what you're marketing to it towards.
Yeah.
So, I hear you. It's that total like disconnect that you run into every once in a while. So going back to the video, what are your thoughts on do you think Gibson as a company should be as concerned as they appear to be with counterfeit and people stealing their ideas? Well,
here's my take on it. I've always thought, and I even thought this kind of not subconsciously, but in the back of my mind, when I was younger, like you'd see a Gibson Les Paul, right? And then you'd go see this copy of this Gibson Les Paul, and I'm like, wow, okay, I understand the concept here. You're making it cheaper, right? But it's you're preserving the body style and everything else, so it's appealing to me, right? Because I want a Gibson Les Paul, but I don't have the money for a Les Paul, so I'll buy the Hohner or whatever, which I did when I was younger. But then the other side of me says, well, if I was Gibson, I'd be like, well, why don't you come up with your own body style?
Well, we know why.
I know.
We know exactly why.
But again, so like you and I talk about luthiers that have their own, they've cracked the code on the guitar, right? And they, some little innovation, but essentially it's a telly with whatever they think they've done.
Yeah, that's because,
and or they do come up with this weird body style, and
nobody wants anything.
Nobody wants it, right? But at least they've gone that far to say, look, I'm not going to copy what this other company's done. I'm going to do my own thing and let the chips fall where they may. But because I do think Gibson has a gripe, and I kind of agree with it. It's like, look, stop copying all our crap. We're trying to innovate too. Make your own body style, make your own headstock shape, and all this other shit. But what do you think? My
take is slightly different on that. I think they shouldn't be that concerned about it, and I think that they should give people more credit for being a lot smarter than they are. You think about it. Let's go back to that copy design.
Are they smarter?
What? Well, I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
But you know what it is. I mean, that this is a copy guitar, and if it's not a high-end copy, like a boutique instrument, you're you're like, that it's not as good usually. I mean, you could argue there were some like Japanese instruments higher up the scale, because Japanese made many scales of the same model sometimes. Right. So it's going to be close, but it's not. So, I mean, I think if you stuck to making quality,
Yeah.
You know, it made that your number one priority. People would naturally want that. And as far as boutique, maybe I could see on the boutique, because those are approaching, you know, like custom. They have the custom shop that does all the, you know, attention to detail they put into that. And some of these boutique builders, who's going to be taking money away from them? That's what I'm trying to decide. So, you know, to get something as good as, let's say, a Les Paul Standard, you have to go to Japan and get an instrument that's high enough up their chain, looking at the specs and see if you can get something like that.
Yeah.
And then you know that when you have it, the resale value isn't going to be as good. So if that's going to be a factor, it's, you know, and I think people are smart enough to do the math and figure it out. I mean, this is the kind of shit that could have the opposite effect. This could hurt your company if you listen to the Never Gonna Buy Againers.
Right.
So I don't know. I just think that there's other things for them to worry about.
And I think you're totally right. I mean, my devil's advocate was just the fact that I always thought about that. It's like, well, if your guitar's so neat, why can't you just make a different body style too altogether and really wow us with your design, right? Or a different headstock shape or whatever it is. But you're right. I mean, I'd much rather them. They have so much brand history and brand loyalty, really, still, I think, among guitar players. Most guitar players like Gibson as a brand, and they like those guitars.
Right.
And so you've already got all this stuff built up. Exactly. Why go negative, or why try to, like, you know, flex your muscles a little bit? Why not just come out and say, you know, hey, man, or be totally transparent and say, yeah, we kind of screwed up, man. We lost our way. But here's what we're doing now to get back on track. All the stuff you said about
$300
quality.
SG,
exactly,
made in the USA,
exactly.
just for a short time.
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
but anyway. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Focus on quality and bringing it back, and show us how you're going to, you know, like you and I talk about this custom shop bullshit. It's like, why don't you make guitars as good as they used to be, so you don't need a custom shop. You just do custom orders.
Or just take it up a notch.
You know I mean?
I think we're past the time where I think what they charge for a lot of these, and people are going to kill me for this, but it's pretty true. I mean, I don't think they're that far off base for what it takes. The difference between making a Gibson and making like a Fender Stratocaster or a Telecaster is pretty immense. Like the amount of you know, putting a set neck and doing the type of finish work if it's a sunburst.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, it's I think it's pretty reasonable for their off the, you know, their standard non-custom shop stuff. But I think if they just tightened it up a little bit and maybe take a few, you know, maybe a few elements from the custom shop and roll them into there. Something like, this isn't an extra. This just comes with a Gibson guitar, you know? Well,
no, that's what I was saying, is just bring the quality back to the guitars that used to be there, that now you kind of almost seemingly have to pay for a custom shop guitar.
Right.
Just make, like you're saying, just kick it up a notch and make these guitars off the line as great as they were in the 50s and 60s. That's all you got to do. Bring quality back to your freaking manufacturing process, and you know, focus on quality, and that's going to be your differentiator, man. You know, or one of them anyway.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I see both, but I do see both sides of it. Because we, you know, you and I lived through the whole lawsuit thing too, where, but again, like people saw the value in that. I can get this Ibanez guitar that's really killer. I mean, in terms of quality and what it will do, and it's really great guitar, cheaper than I can get. Well, depending on, like you said, the grade.
Right, and that's still
cheaper than the real deal.
And one time we should do something where we talk about, because I love the history of Japanese guitars.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of misconceptions in there. Like you mentioned Ibanez, which made some great, you know, lawsuit knockoff guitars, but they're not. You got to take them as you know, the bolt neck, you know. Les Paul copy that Ibanez made is not as good as even a Norlin era.
No.
You know, so you have to go up, and then you can start see the ones-to-ones come up.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, I mean, when I started out, it was copies. We got them. You know, I got a $300 Les Paul bolt neck guitar, and that was my entry into it. And all I did from the time that I got it was, you know, count my years until I could get a Gibson. I wanted a Gibson.
Yeah,
I mean, it was much easier back then. It's just like, you get this until you can get a Gibson.
Right.
You get a Gibson. And it's interesting, though, because it wasn't very long after I entered the guitar playing world in the, you know, the mid to late 70s that you started to hear things about, like, like you hear now, Gibson, it's over with. They're blah 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 quality, blah blah. They're just assholes, blah blah blah. So they have a pretty long history of doing stupid things, and at least being called out for stupid things.
Yeah.
So,
but it was interesting that you just said about the copies. That should be incentive for them to partner with these other copy companies to say this is because they're gateways. They're gateways to Gibson. Essentially, it was for me. I knew eventually I wanted a Les Paul and I would get one, a real one, but I wanted one then and I couldn't afford one. So the best thing I could do was get this copy.
They try with Epiphone, but I'm not. I'm not an Epiphone fan.
No.
I mean, I'm sure there's models in the line that are okay, but I don't. I mean, there's a lot of other Japanese guitars that I would take in a heartbeat over them. Even
But I guess it's just a mentality that they should adopt. It's like, okay, rather than try to sue these people or something, just look at it as a gateway to our company. They'll eventually they're getting that copy because they want the real thing, but they can't afford it. In most cases, I think, or a lot of cases. Anyway.
And do something that they're doing now, which I would like to see come back, is focus on getting a USA made quality instrument. I mean, they have some. They have some, pushing like from the 900s up like that. And in 2019, that's not, for an American made, handmade instrument, that's not
It's a
bad.
great price.
Right.
Actually.
So, I mean, they did it so much in the 70s when they were just really feeling the heat from Japanese manufacturers. They got creative, with Fender did like the Lead series and other things. They tried to get the prices down. And, we have Gibson, which was doing Firebrands and, whatever, know. So that to me was the kind of innovation that I liked. It's like, we're going to figure out how to make an electric guitar as cheaply as possible, but quality, and we're not just going to make another Les Paul in a different country.
Right,
So
Les Paul Studio.
We'll just find the cheapest country, and we'll make the cheapest Les Paul, and we'll do tiers that way. Cheap labor, cheaper label, cheapest label. Crap.
Right.
So,
but like you said, I like the fact that just getting creative with the Les Paul. Like the Paul is a stripped down, but it's great. It uses great wood. It uses a great fretboard. Everything's cool. Same with like the studios. The studios are all mahogany, right? And I mean, they don't have the binding and things like that. But I mean, it's a great guitar for less money. But like you say too, bring jobs back to the USA. Start really finding out how you can build those guitars back here, or some of them, or a lot of them.
If you still can, I don't know. I'm not in touch. I know it's expensive. A lot of people, you'll see that it's only like $200 to make a guitar. There's no way. I mean, even the labor. If you're going to pay people anything to make them, I mean, it's
expensive.
And you want to pay people to make them. You want to pay them well because you want them to be well made.
Yeah.
And no, I actually think that the way that a Gibson guitar is put together is like, I don't think it's super unreasonable. I mean, I hear people saying all the time, they're just so priced so high, especially the used market, which is what usually all I deal with anyway.
Right.
It's like, that's a really good, I love Fender guitars.
Yeah.
I do too, but I know that even, a really nice Telecaster doesn't have the type of labor and parts and everything else that go into it that a Gibson does.
Right.
I mean, Gibson is super old school. It's like Martin or one of the old companies. I mean, Fender. I mean, someday we can maybe do a Fender Does Stupid, because they've done things.
Oh yeah.
And then again, it's like Fender has done things that I haven't liked for many, many years. They made the American Standard. I did not like that model. It was quality, but it was too refined. I didn't like the bridge, other elements, and it's like I never went, I'm not gonna, I hate Fender. I was like, no, because we have the 60s, 70s, 80s, and there was all these instruments made, and there's one in there for me, and it's the same with Gibson.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they could do to make me say I hate Gibson. I mean, and I like that when the term fanboy gets thrown out there all the time. It's like, I think that's an element of like...
Or you're a brand snob.
Yeah. Sports creeps into this at sometimes, which I don't really have the gene for that to understand. But like, it's like a team thing. That's not me at all like that. I mean, I wouldn't call what I have brand loyalty in my love for Gibson. Other than, I mean, I guess it's some form of, I just like the way the guitar, the early history of the company.
Yeah.
And I like the way the guitars sound. These are guitars that, helped invent rock and roll.
Totally.
They're all there. They all have the classic sounds in them, and they feel great. I love the way they're made.
Yeah, and I think it's brand loyalty. And I feel the same way. And it's not that I think it's brand loyalty, but it's not fanboy. It's not to that extreme, right? Because we're pragmatic enough to know that it's not the end all be all, but like you said, for the reasons, here's the deal. Gibson Company has earned its place in the market. It just has. Like you say, it's one of the early innovators of electric guitars, just like Fender is. And so and Gretsch and Rickenbacker, all those companies, those are the early people that started making this stuff, and they were figuring it out, and they did figure it out, and they make some great guitars, and they're gonna have hiccups, and they're gonna go through shitty times where their quality sags, and then they'll have a shitty CEO. But yeah, it does baffle me too how people can just write off a brand because every brand does that.
Yeah,
if they have the good fortune to last a while, you're going to screw up, Look at Converse. They were redesigning those iconic shoes, and sure enough, they screwed it up. Because rather than just because the whole idea was they were partnering with Nike, right? To make a comfortable insole.
Okay.
Because, the traditional ones are just flat and everything else. Great. Do that. Just do that. But leave the classic stuff people love the way it is. No, they had to change it. Okay. So they changed the design of the shoe. And sure enough, they released some into the market, and they had to reel it back because people were like, "What are you doing? This is such an iconic shoe.
You don't know us. You don't know your base."
And so that was another interesting parallel, I think, to Gibson, is that these companies do these things that, to me, maybe they did their research and they said, "Yes, this is going to work," or maybe it was just some, we all know, working in the corporate environment long enough, some hotshot, arrogant dude who says, "Nah, this is what we're going to do." The kids want a new design, but sure enough, they didn't. They wanted the classic. There's brand loyalty out there for the Converse. You and I both know that. You're a Converse wearer. I am too.
Right.
And so I'm all for innovations, but do it in a way that honors your brand, and because people are used to that brand and they like it, they love it. Like I love it's the classic Chuck Taylor high top.
Right.
You don't screw with that, man.
So if you think about this too, let's say they're serious about like going after, trademark, copyright infringement, whatever.
Right.
And if you take the kind of money that it costs to do that, to take that all the way through whatever process you have, and you could put that into like, just up in quality, maybe coming up with, a couple of models. I mean, you could spend that money really well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's really easy for us in our little armchairs here to say all this stuff. About. And it also is easy for us to say that, why would you do that? Because I do really believe that guitar players, by and large, are, they're kind of traditionalists, and but there are probably a lot. I mean, there's probably maybe one or two guys that said this robot guitar is fucking great. I've been waiting for this my entire life.
Or that one person that has the Firebird X that is just like polishing it right now.
Finally, they made something for me.
That one guy. No, I think over time what has happened, as you and I both have seen, is that, yes, I think a lot of us there's so much romance attached to the guitar and these historic brands like Gibson and Fender, because, we grew up seeing all our favorite rock stars play these guitars, right? There's the guitar geeks too that they swear off the Gibson and Fender stuff, and they'll only buy they'll say that the Collings Les Paul Jr. is, way better than they'll compare that to the Gibson Jr. and stuff like that. Anyway, so I think you're right. I think that for musicians and guitar players especially, there is this romance a lot of us hold, but I think there's, over time that it's a little more diverse now, right? There's the boutique people who, anyway, what do you think?
Well, no, I think you just hit on something that I thought was very interesting. You mentioned Collings and the Junior, and that's a good example because that guitar, that's a great guitar. Yeah. I played one. I didn't want to like it as much as I did. Yeah. I know. But the thing that's interesting about that, you look at that Junior and you're like, okay, they might be safe from Gibson because they have a different headstock. But I mean, that guitar is like almost 100% Gibson.
Yeah.
Everything, the way it sounds, the way it feels, everything came from Gibson. Is that what they're talking about in this video? Like that level of like, don't even try to do that?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's pretty interesting.
Well, I I love Fender and I love Gibson and I love Gretsch. I mean, I just love all those brands that I grew up watching people play these guitars, and people still play them, right? I mean, so I guess my thing is, like, you know, they did it right in a lot of ways with a lot of different models. All these companies did, and there's a reason, I guess, they're being copied, because they were doing it right, you know. Yeah. But I guess, yeah, the overall sentiment, I guess both you and I share is that, and most people probably online, is that, look, you generated this goodwill, keep it going, and focus on the right stuff, because again, we don't have insights into their board meetings and stuff, but this does seem like just a bonehead move to do, because it's like, it just seemed heavy-handed, and it wasn't that thinly veiled. It was almost like a direct threat, saying, you know, these are the trademark appointments of our guitars. You know, people are out there stealing them, and you're on notice, essentially.
Yeah, it was ridiculously overly dramatic.
Yeah,
and corny too. Even if you took away like the threat element, it was just kind of cornball.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, you got rid of one person that everybody had a problem with. That's
the irony. It seemed inauthentic to me. His delivery and everything else seemed staged or, you know, practiced.
Ironic,
yes. Like you, I like to people watch, and these kinds of things that happen are fascinating to me too. I love to watch the threads and watch people lose their shit about it, and it's been fun to watch, and I definitely wanted to talk to you about it and get your take on it, because I you know, like I said, I can see both sides of it, but ultimately I come down on the side of, look, you know, generate goodwill. And nowadays too, like for me, I yearn for authenticity. I don't like bullshit. I don't like, I can tell when somebody's trying to work me, and I don't want to be worked. And if you guys are serious about being authentic and playing authentic, you be authentic yourself. Yeah. Don't put some yo-yo in a video, you know, passionately talking about
just
Gibson.
Like he just came from Sean on.
Right, exactly. Because the whole thing came across to me as inauthentic and ironic, and just a bad move. Again, it's like somebody's bad decision. Uh-huh. And you'd think after all that Gibson's been through already, they wouldn't want to do, you know what I mean? Like, let's be really careful about what we release, because we just went through this time period where we screwed it up.
How many people got fired because of that video? I want to find out.
Oh my God, I hope a lot. I hope a lot.
Nobody got fired. They probably, if they learned anything, they'll forget it soon and they'll do something stupid again. And everybody in the internet will go nuts, and I'll continue to love Gibson guitars.
Me too.
And buy Gibson guitars. And the thing is, I haven't, you know, I'm not a new guitar person, so you know, there's a lifetime of guitars out there for me. For, you know, even if I wanted to buy a bunch more guitars, because, you know, I just go for the used and vintage stuff.
Yeah,
there's a lot of it, and you can find good deals still.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm more of a used guy than a new guy too, for sure. And yeah, it's especially for the models you and I like. We kind of like the off models, and so those are usually still attainable for us. And just circling back, I just think brands like Gibson or Fender or Converse or any of these brands, when you've been around so long, and it's generational, right? Like, you've got this foothold in an industry, and you're one of the big players. Use that to your advantage and do the right thing, you know, especially after you've screwed up so much, you know, just do the right thing, you know, get back to quality, focus on the right things those are the competitive edges, especially nowadays, because everybody wants to do things on the cheap and make, you know, cut corners and save a penny and do all this other crap. And now, ironically, like, quality might come back as an actual thing again, you know?
I like it, the point in the video where he was talking something about like filmmakers or something, you know, just approach us. Right. It's like, why the fuck would I don't need to approach you. I can use whatever I want. You know what I mean? It's like,
exactly.
I'm making a movie. If I want to put a fucking Gibson in someone's hand, I'll put a Gibson, I'll put a Fender, whatever I want. What the fuck was that?
It was a smarmy move is what it was. It was like some really smarmy, desperate thing. Again, there's just so many different ways they could have gone with this.
Yeah, no.
But anyway,
it was very fascinating. I enjoyed it.
I did too. And again, they'll do stupid things in the future. And yeah, I'd love to talk about Fender going stupid too, because that's fun too. But anyway, yeah, cool. I really dug talking about that, and I'm sure it'll surface again. But thanks so much for listening, man. We really appreciate it. go to chrisandricktalkguitars.com, go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, like us, love us, give us good reviews, talk to us. Yeah, send us emails.
And above all else, play authentic.
And play authentic, please. Yeah, great advice. All right, well, we're out of here.
Goodbye.